English Time podcast.
Helping you speak English with confidence, naturally.
Hello, wonderful listeners. Welcome back to English Time Podcast, your cozy corner for English fluency, confidence, and connection. I'm Henry.
And I'm Emma. Thank you for pressing play today. We're really glad you're here. And I mean that, especially today, because today's topic is heavy.
It is. We're going to talk about war, real war, the kind that's happening in our world right now. And I have to be honest, this episode feels different from anything we've done before.
It does. We thought about this topic for a long time before bringing it to you. Because war is not just a word, it's not just something on the news. Behind every headline, there are real people. Mothers, fathers, children, whose entire lives changed in one night.
And that's what we want to focus on today. Not the politics, not who is right or wrong, but the human side. What it actually feels like when everyday life just stops. The fear, the hope, and the real stories of people living through this right now.
Yeah. Watching the news can sometimes make you feel helpless, like you're standing far away looking at a wall of tragedy. Today, we want to try to understand just a small part of their world, together. So whether you've been learning English for years or you're just starting out, you're welcome to stay here with us and listen. We'll talk about these real events and the English we use to describe them, gently and step by step.
And if you believe in learning real English for real life, not just textbook English, please like the video and subscribe. It really helps our channel, and it helps more learners find us. Also, don't forget to download the free PDF transcript for this episode. You can find the link in the comments section below. It's a great way to review all the vocabulary and patterns we're about to cover.
There's really no easy way to transition into a topic like this. So I want to start with an image that I haven't been able to get out of my head. A photograph I saw online a few weeks ago. A little girl in Ukraine, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sitting on the floor of a train station. She was holding a stuffed animal, a small bear. Her mother sat next to her, staring at nothing. Their suitcase was open, clothes everywhere. They had packed in minutes.
And behind them, just an ordinary train station, the kind you and I pass through without thinking. But for that family, it was the border between their old life and their new one. The word for them is refugees, people who are forced to leave their home because of war or danger.
Refugees. And that word carries so much weight. It's not just a vocabulary word. It's someone's entire life packed into one suitcase.
When the war in Ukraine started in February 2022, millions of people became refugees overnight. They didn't plan it. They didn't choose it. One night, they were just setting their alarms for work, maybe stressing over an email or an overdue bill. Just small, normal problems. A few hours later, the air raid sirens began to scream, warning people that bombs might be coming. And in that moment, everything changed.
And that brings us to the word flee. Flee means to run away from danger very quickly. Families had to flee their homes. Entire cities were destroyed. Families were torn apart.
Torn apart. That means being separated in a painful and violent way. And when that happens, even your worries change. I remember reading about a man named Alexei from Kharkiv. He was a school teacher. He said, "I used to worry about exams and grades. Now I worry about whether my students are alive." That sentence broke something inside me.
It reminds us that war doesn't just destroy buildings. It destroys normal life. The simple things. Complaining about a Monday morning, drinking a quiet cup of coffee in your kitchen, walking your dog down a safe street. And overnight, the life people once knew is gone. You never realize how beautiful a boring normal day is until it disappears.
Yeah, that reminds me of a line from the show Band of Brothers. An officer stands there, freezing in the cold, surrounded by war, and he just says, "If somehow I manage to get home again, I promised God and myself that I would find a quiet piece of land someplace and spend the rest of my life in peace.
Not glory, not medals, just peace. Just a boring, normal day.
And that is exactly what is disappearing for people right now. Not in a history book, right now, as we speak. The war in Ukraine is still going on. People are still living in shelters. Children are still studying in basements, and they just endure.
Endure. That means to keep going through pain and suffering day after day, even when there seems to be no end. You hear it in the news a lot. Civilians continue to endure the effects of the war.
And watching them endure brings up another word I think about a lot: resilience. It means the ability to recover, to stand up again after being knocked down. The Ukrainian people have shown incredible resilience.
It's a very powerful word. You can use it in everyday life, too. Like, she showed such resilience after going through a really rough patch. But when you read about a teenager doing their homework by candlelight because the fighting knocked out the power, it completely breaks your heart. You just wish the war would end soon so they could finally live a normal life again.
Exactly. It makes you realize how incredibly precious a normal, quiet, even boring day is.
I completely agree. And when that normal day is violently taken away, that's when we see what people are truly made of. Which brings us to the word we hear in the news constantly: conflict.
Right. A conflict is a serious fight or disagreement, usually long, violent, and painful. What we see happening in Ukraine, that is a conflict. And inside every conflict, there is terrible suffering. But alongside that suffering, there is also resistance.
Exactly. Resistance means standing up against something, refusing to give in. You hear it a lot on the news. The civilian resistance surprised the world. But it's not just about soldiers or weapons. When a mother teaches her child to smile even when things are terrible, that is resistance. When a teacher keeps teaching English to students inside a dark shelter, that is resistance too. It's the choice to keep living, learning, and hoping when everything around you tells you to give up.
It's the human spirit refusing to be broken. And when you want to express that feeling of resistance, there's a really powerful pattern you can use in English. For example, despite the fear, they kept trying to build a better life.
I love that pattern. It perfectly captures that feeling of pushing back. Like in language learning, despite making mistakes, she kept speaking. Or in everyday life, despite being completely exhausted, he stayed up to help his kids with their homework.
Exactly. Despite everything, they never lost hope. And I think that connects beautifully to another idea we hear a lot. They can destroy our homes, but they cannot destroy our spirit. Like one Ukrainian musician said, they can destroy my piano, but not my music. Those are the kinds of sentences that echo in your mind.
And for everyone listening right now, take a deep breath. We know this is a heavy topic. It's much easier to listen to a podcast about coffee or travel, but you chose to stay here, to sit with these difficult emotions and to try to understand other people's pain. That's real empathy, and you're doing it in a second language.
Exactly. English is not just about grammar or vocabulary. It's a way to understand other people in the world. If this conversation got you thinking, tell us in the comments, what does the word peace mean to you? Not from the dictionary, from your heart. And after this short break, we'll talk about what's happening in the Middle East and how language can actually help build bridges. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we talked about families in Ukraine. But sadly, that's not the only place where everyday life has been turned upside down.
Turned upside down. It just means everything that was normal and safe is suddenly completely changed. We see this happening not just in Ukraine, but right now in the Middle East. But when we watch the news about it, we often just hear big, complicated words. Reporters talk about political history, military threats, or how a region is on the brink of war.
On the brink means right at the edge, one step away from disaster. But behind those big political words, there are always just people, families. I was reading the news this morning, and I saw a report about the recent attacks in Iran. It said that over 100 children had lost their lives. Over 100 children. It just stopped me in my tracks.
That is incredibly hard to hear. When a tragedy like that hits you, you just can't move or speak. It makes you completely freeze. But that right there is the true tragedy of war. It's not about politics or borders. It's about 100 families whose hearts are completely broken. It's about innocent children who didn't even know what war was.
Exactly. And that's why reading international news can feel so disconnected sometimes, because governments often use very cold, diplomatic English to talk about these human tragedies. You might hear words like sanctions, which are economic punishments, or proxy wars, where big countries fight each other indirectly.
Right. They use clean, professional words. They might call a bombing an operation or a military action an intervention. It makes it sound like a math problem that needs to be solved rather than human lives being destroyed.
But for the people actually living there are no complicated concepts. They don't experience an intervention. They just experience the bombs. They experience the panic and having to grab their children and run.
Political language often sounds neat and controlled, but the reality for ordinary people is deeply painful. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough. Memorizing words from the news might improve your English, but understanding the human experience beneath those headlines, that changes the way you see the world. And I think that's the real reason we learn another language.
That's so true. Think about a word like ceasefire. On paper, it just means a temporary agreement to stop fighting.
But the human experience beneath that word is relief. Pure relief. Because a ceasefire means, at least for today, nobody dies.
And then there's the opposite, escalation. It simply means the conflict is getting bigger and more violent. Every time I hear that word on the news, my stomach drops because it means more suffering.
You know what I keep thinking about? The children. In Iran, in Ukraine, in every war zone, children who never asked for any of this. They didn't vote, they didn't make political decisions. They were just born in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now they carry trauma that will last their entire lives.
Trauma, deep emotional pain after a terrible experience. And it doesn't go away when the bombs stop. It stays with people for years, sometimes forever. That's what makes war so cruel. The fighting might end, but the invisible wounds remain.
Exactly. Even though the war ended, the trauma stayed. Even though the guns went silent, the fear never did. Sometimes what we see is only half the truth.
That's a great point. And there's a word that represents the opposite of conflict, diplomacy. Diplomacy means solving problems through talking, not fighting, through conversation, not weapons. You can say, the world needs more diplomacy and less destruction.
I love that word because diplomacy is really just listening with respect. And here's a pattern that goes perfectly with it. It's not about who's right. It's about finding a way forward. You can use this anywhere. It's not about winning. It's about understanding. It's not about perfect English. It's about honest communication.
These patterns are so useful because they help you think clearly and express yourself clearly. Whether you're writing a paragraph or having a deep conversation, they give you structure.
And this connects to something I feel very strongly about. When we learn English, we often focus on happy topics, vacations, food, hobbies, and those are wonderful. But real fluency, it means being able to express difficult feelings too. Sadness, anger, helplessness, fear.
Helplessness. That feeling of wanting to do something but not being able to. I felt helpless watching the news. That's a real sentence. And saying it in English, even quietly to yourself, that's a form of emotional fluency.
Emotional fluency. I love that. It's not just knowing words, it's knowing how to put your heart into words. And sometimes the most powerful sentences are the simplest ones. This breaks my heart. I wish I could help. Nobody deserves this.
Nobody deserves this. 4 words, but when you say them, really say them, you feel their weight.
And here's something I want our listeners to know. You don't need big, fancy vocabulary to talk about serious topics. You need honesty. You need heart. A sentence like, I hope the war ends soon. That's perfect English. It's clear, it's real, and it carries emotion.
Exactly. You know, if there was one sentence of English I wish the whole world could learn, it would just be this. I hope for peace. I hope for world peace.
Yes, just that. It's so simple, but it's everything.
And you know what else? Being able to talk about these things in English gives you a voice in a global conversation. You can read international news. You can understand different perspectives. You can even share your own feelings with people from other countries. That's the real power of language.
Let me share a few more phrases that come up again and again in these conversations. Humanitarian crisis. That's when a large number of people are suffering and need urgent help. Food, water, medicine, shelter. You hear it a lot. The war has caused a massive humanitarian crisis.
And displacement. That's when people are forced to leave their homes. Millions of people have been displaced by the conflict. And behind that word is a family with nowhere to go.
And negotiate, to talk with the other side and try to find a solution. World leaders are trying to negotiate a peace deal. Negotiation requires patience, respect, and the willingness to listen. And honestly, that's a skill we all need, not just in politics.
You know, that reminds me of something. Negotiation, listening, understanding, these are the same skills we use in everyday life. When you have a disagreement with a friend, when you're trying to resolve a problem at work. The language of peace isn't just for world leaders, it's for all of us.
That's so true. You can say, let's find common ground. That means let's find something we both agree on, even if we disagree about other things. Or, I see your point. That means I understand your perspective, even if I don't fully agree. These phrases build bridges.
And the world needs more bridges right now. Not walls, not weapons, but bridges. Bridges made of words, understanding, and the courage to listen before reacting. And if you're still with us, it means something. This isn't an easy conversation, but it shows that you care more than just language. You care about people, and that matters.
Take another breath. Let everything we talked about settle for a moment. And when you're ready, stay with us for the final part. Well, we'll talk about culture, hope, and why ordinary people might just be the world's best chance for peace.
Welcome back, everyone. In this last part, let's talk about something that war can never truly destroy, the human need for connection, and why ordinary people may be the world's greatest hope for peace.
You know what breaks my heart the most? When you really look at the cultures of the countries fighting each other, you discover something beautiful, something that makes you realize ordinary people were never enemies to begin with.
Take Ukraine, for example. There's a beautiful tradition there. When a guest arrives, you welcome them with bread and salt, one of the oldest symbols of peace and friendship. It's a quiet way of saying, you are safe here, you are welcome.
And in Russia, it's tea. The moment someone visits, the kettle goes on. Tea is the way you say, sit down, stay a while, let's talk. It's warmth in a cup.
2 countries at war, yet their people share the same instinct, that natural feeling of wanting to welcome strangers, to offer comfort, to be kind.
I love that word, instinct. It's like a feeling you're born with. You don't have to think about it. Your heart just knows it's the right thing to do.
It really is, and in both cultures, they're saying the exact same thing. Come in, sit down, you are welcome here.
Exactly. And that tells you everything. People don't want war. People want connection. They want to share a meal, pour a cup of tea, break bread together. The problem was never the people. It was the lack of communication, the lack of understanding at the political level.
And maybe that's why language matters so much, because when you learn someone's language, you don't just learn their words, you begin to understand them. And when you truly understand someone, it's very hard to see them as an enemy.
That is so true. And there's one more thing language gives you, which is so important when the world feels messy and loud. It's the power of independent thinking.
Independent thinking. I love that. It basically means the ability to think for yourself, right? To look at all the information and decide what you believe, instead of just repeating what everyone else is saying.
Exactly. During a conflict, there is often a lot of noise. Every side has its own version of the story. If you only speak one language, you might be trapped in a small information bubble. You only hear the version of the truth that is closest to you.
But when you have a second language, like English, you can break that bubble. You can read a post from a real person in a war zone. You can listen to an interview with someone on the other side. You can see the human details, the small, complicated truths that big news channels often miss.
It's like having a key. It opens doors to so many different perspectives. And that is how we build a real, honest opinion. We stop seeing the world in just black and white or us and them. You realize that people everywhere are just people. They have the same fears and the same dreams.
Exactly. You aren't just a consumer of news anymore. You become an investigator. You can verify things for yourself. And that ability to form your own thoughts based on real evidence, that's a form of freedom that nobody can take away from you.
I love that. So for everyone listening, remember, every new word you learn isn't just for a test. It's a tool to help you understand the truth for yourself. It's a way to keep your heart open even when the world is trying to close it.
Before we close, there's one more thing we should talk about: hope. Because even in the darkest moments, people still find hope. English has a beautiful way of showing that. While bombs were falling outside, musicians were playing in subway stations.
That's incredibly powerful. And it's true. In Ukraine, musicians really did play in subway stations while bombs fell outside. In the Middle East, ordinary people on both sides still dream of peace for their children.
As they say, no matter how dark the night gets, people still find a reason to hope.
And no matter how loud the bombs are, children still find a way to laugh. They can destroy homes, but they can't destroy the human spirit.
And every time people pick up the pieces and begin again, that's not just survival, that's hope.
And for everyone listening right now, maybe you've never experienced war, and I truly hope you never do. But you can still care. You can still learn. You can still use your voice in English, in your own language, in any language to say, peace matters. People matter.
So let's take a moment to look back at what we covered today. We talked about real conflicts happening in our world, the war in Ukraine, the tensions in the Middle East, and through those stories, we learned some important English words.
We looked at words like resilience, displacement, and ceasefire. These aren't just news words, they're human words. Each one carries a real story behind it.
And we also practiced some really useful sentence patterns, the kind that make your English feel deeper and more expressive. Let's go through them one more time.
Despite the destruction, people kept going. You can use despite whenever something terrible happened, but something else still survived.
They can destroy our homes, but they can't destroy our spirit. That contrast, showing that even when something is taken away, something deeper always remains.
Even though the war ended, the trauma stayed. A reminder that the visible story is only half the truth.
It's not about winning, it's about understanding, shifting the focus from the surface to what truly matters.
While bombs fell outside, musicians played inside. Two realities side by side, the darkness and the light.
And no matter how dark the night, people still find hope. Because it doesn't matter how bad things get, something good still exists.
These patterns aren't just for talking about war. You can use them in essays, in speeches, in deep conversations with friends. They give your words weight and structure.
Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end. This was a heavy episode, and the fact that you're still here, that means something. It means you care, and caring is never wasted.
Before we go, we have one question for you. If you could say one sentence to the world right now about peace, about hope, about what matters, what would you say? Write it in the comments. We'll read every single one.
Take care of yourself. Take care of the people around you. And remember, even learning a new language is an act of building bridges.
That's all for today. See you next time and wishing you a peaceful week.
Bye.
Your progress so far has already been wonderful. If you'd like to keep going and feel even more confident with your English, feel free to check out the next video or take a look at some of the other ones we've picked for you.